We're back. Do you know what the Perennial is? Well, Karen Liebowitz is here to tell us about it and why this is going to be something you need to know about. So Karen, welcome to SFA News Live.
Thank you.
So what's the Perennial?
Well, the Perennial is a restaurant here in San Francisco, actually just a few blocks away on 9th Street, and it's dedicated to championing regenerative agriculture, which means serving foods that can actually reverse climate change. So we are really excited about the capacity for agriculture, farming, when done right, to draw down CO2, which is a greenhouse gas, and restore our environment.
And I think that what you're doing is so important because typically when we're talking about food waste, and I don't know if you've seen the film Wasted yet, and so on, what we're hearing from a lot of food service operators, a lot of chefs, is the move right now is to basically use all of the food, that chefs are creative, that nothing should be wasted. But you're going well beyond that.
It's true. Food waste, if it were a country, would be the third worst source of greenhouse gases. So food waste is a really important piece of the puzzle. But for us, it's also about starting with ingredients that are not just doing less harm to the environment, but actively doing more good.
So give me some examples of what are the dishes, what are the foods that do that?
Sure. We actually named the restaurant the Perennial because perennial plants are actually so much better at drawing down greenhouse gases. They have deep root systems and don't get tilled, which releases the CO2. So one of the things we've been most excited about is a new grain called kernza, which I think...
Never heard of it.
Okay, so...
Kernza, tell me about kernza.
It's developed through natural breeding by the Land Institute in Kansas as a way of restoring really the soil by merging wheat with the native grasses. So what we have in the grain belt is really soil erosion,
right,
which is also contributing to climate change.
Besides soil erosion, we're having what I'm going to call, it's not the right term, dead soil.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not live soil that's living and breathing and so on, because all the nutrients have been taken out of the soil.
The nutrients have been lost, and people try to compensate with fertilizer, but then the fertilizer kind of filters through this dead soil and goes out to the waterways and even to the ocean, causing more problems. And so these Kansans said we need to find a way to make our farming actually replicate the natural ecosystems. So they started with a native grass that is in the wheat family, but is a perennial, and developed it until it was a feasible food crop. So we are making kernza bread at the Perennial. I actually bake it some of the time, and we serve a beer that Patagonia Provisions is making with kernza called Long Root Ale, and then we combine them for a beer bread, and we've done some other kind of innovations with the grain.
But you're using other grains than just that, or is that the only grain you use?
So the percentages will vary based on the end product. Yeah, but the sourdough bread that we're making is about a third kernza, and we also have a waffle. We do different things. So we're really excited about that idea of actually serving people a taste of the food system that we want to have in the future. I think we're going to get to a point where we can't just pretend climate change doesn't exist. We have to take active steps, and not just to slow it down, but to draw down greenhouse gases. So that's what we're excited about.
And if we take a look at probably the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm a huge fan of Jerry Brown and everything that he talks about in general, but also with climate change. I mean, we have accelerated the problem, not de-accelerated it.
Right.
And we look at the fires in California, the drought in California, and he points to climate change as really having these extreme weather conditions around the globe. And we need to wake up.
So we're really focused on healthy soil, not only as a way to draw down greenhouse gases, but also it is a very important piece of fire prevention. Like if the soil is healthy, it holds water better. it fights against drought and fire, and also allows farmers to plan ahead, for long-term healthy soil, and it creates products that are more nutritious and more delicious. So I think for the Fancy Food Show, Kernza is a really exciting opportunity to imagine new products with a grain that people are not familiar with, but is also really tasty.
Well, if you look at a lot of the ancient grains that have really become mainstream, when you walk into a supermarket and some of the main brands of bread are now using, amaranth and teff and some of the others, clearly the wind is at your back. And I guess for me, one of the ones that I always have to question is about hemp, because hemp is one of the most sustainable, easy to grow, healthy, nutritious, and so on, and we just can't get past ourselves to make hemp legal in this country. And I think now it's up to probably 37 or 38 states that have, but the federal government is still preventing it, and so on. So when do we pull back and we say, okay, here are products, here are grains that are really good for us, good for the environment, and this is the direction that we go? What are those roadblocks that we have?
I think that we need to have consumer demand work hand in hand with political demand. So here in California, we have something called the Healthy Soils Initiative. And we also have innovators using products like Kernza. And what you have is people talking to their representatives based on what they've learned from the foods that they're eating. And I think it's a real opportunity, because for many of us, especially in cities, food is our kind of closest connection to nature, and we bring it inside of ourselves, and we're really concerned about what we associate ourselves with. And then once you understand that there is this incredibly regenerative option, that I think turns into a demand for legislation that supports that. So right now, California has earmarked some of the money from the gas tax to incentivize farming and ranching that promotes healthy soil.
That's great.
It is great, and it should be national.
It should be national, and I think that as consumers are getting, especially millennials and Generation Z, as these groups are getting more passionate about food and demanding more transparency about our foods, I mean, initiatives like this are not rocket science, and we always look at the Farm Bill, and that's coming up again, and we're going to have lots of discussion, I'm sure, with this administration about that. And we need to have citizens out there pushing and talking to their representatives, and understanding that even though we might only be on this planet 80 or 90 or hopefully 100 years, the planet has to continue. And we're, failing in that right now.
Yeah, I think that among millennials and younger generations, there is a real investment of their values in the products that they associate themselves with, and particularly their foods. I think they also have a certain cynicism about how past generations have failed them. And so it's really a kind of a great opportunity for me to be able to say, no, there's actually something that we can do. It's not inevitable. So I think, like, in general, restaurateurs love to kind of feed people and comfort them and make them at home. And it's really wonderful for us to be able to say, come in and eat, and we'll give you some hope. So that's my work.
Good food and hope, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, not to mention drinks.
And drinks. Yeah. Now, do you use the grain in any of the drinks, besides the beer?
We do not. So currently we have a sourdough that we make in-house, a beer bread that we make, a waffle, and then we have a dessert that uses kind of like a Kernza cookie crumble. And there are not that many drinks with grains in them that are not distilled as such. There is a Kernza whiskey that's...
I would say that there could be certainly a vodka made from Kernza.
Yeah, there is a Kernza whiskey that I believe is made in Ojai by Ventura Spirits. But we have not worked out the distribution situation.
Okay. Well, keep up the great work.
Oh,
the project sounds fabulous.
Great.
The restaurant
Yeah.
sounds fabulous. I'm going to have to get there and try.
Well, it's only a few blocks from here.
I know.
So
I know.
please do.
I'm working. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Phil is going to be with us, not this Phil, the other Phil, who's going to give us the lowdown of everything that's gone on so far at Fancy Food 2018 live here at the Moscone Center.